sports editor of the Los Angeles Times in Los Angeles, with three folks from London: John Cherwa, our London bureau chief for the Olympics; Casey Johnson and Lisa Dillman, two reporters who are covering a variety of elements. And we've got a lot to talk about today. There's plenty going on, plenty coming up. Of course, with a couple days left of swimming, that's still very high on the list. And Michael Phelps is coming up again today. What do we think about that, the 100 butterfly?
Well, as I was talking with John last night, the long goodbye has turned into the golden goodbye. I mean, the first night of swimming, he doesn't make the podium in his pet event, the 400 IM. And now he has the potential to win 2 more medals. The 100 fly is tonight, and then the medley relay is on the final day of swimming. I mean, right now he has 20 overall medals, 16 of them gold. So much for being washed up.
So the argument has gone on: is he the greatest Olympian of all time? I don't imagine anybody's going to match that medal count. But how do his skills translate against other sports?
Well, I think if Phil Hirsch were sitting here, he'd disagree with me, and I think he has written to that effect. I think he wrote that in Beijing, and he wrote that recently. And John brought that up the other day, that there are many more medals achievable in swimming. You know, the 3 relays, you can swim a whole variety of distances, and where others are limited in the medals they can win.
I mean, is there if you can win 2 medals in one day, does that make it, is that too easy? I mean, if something's easy enough where you can win 2 medals, not only in one day, but within 2 hours.
Yeah, even half an hour sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to say a swimming medal is less than another medal, but, the person who wins the marathon medal is, running longer than the whole swimming event.
Well, and then think about triathlon, too.
Yeah.
Well, and there are other sports too where you just don't have the opportunity to compete in the number of events, so you can't possibly accumulate that number. But still, the number is phenomenal, and I don't think it's one that's going to be broken.
No.
We enter now the sort of phase 2 of the Olympics, with the track competition getting underway. Today's day 1. There's not a lot of medal events today, but there are qualifying events. What are we looking to see today?
Well, there are actually 2 medals: the shot put, and I'm not sure we even qualified somebody into that this morning, and then the women's 10,000 meters. So, nobody really, that's not the high marquee stuff. But tonight you will have the start of the qualifying of the women's 100. You've got Carmelita Jeter, who's the defending world champion. You've got Allison Felix, who I don't know whether she belongs in here or not, because she was in that tie in Portland. It's not her strongest event. Her strongest event is the 200. And that's where the Track Federation, U.S. Track Federation, really screwed things up by not having a tiebreaker procedure. And but she's in there too, and I don't know if she'll make the final 8. I mean, we'll see. We'll know pretty soon at least. And then the women's 400 meters, Sonia Richards-Ross is pretty good. I mean, it's a definite medal hopeful for the U.S. And so I think those are the marquee things tonight. Today and tomorrow are the toughest days for us here, because you have not only track but swimming going on the same day.
Right. And then we get exclusively into track, and it sort of takes over. And there are plenty of storylines there that we'll be following in our subsequent chats as well. Casey, you've been following the women's basketball team among other events. They're certainly the gold medal favorite. They've got an incredible winning streak going on. How do they look so far?
Well, they look phenomenal, and from my perspective, they're actually one of the overlooked stories of these games, because obviously so much attention is heaped on that men's team. I mean, they've got the longest basketball win streak in Olympic history at 36 games. They're going for their 5th straight gold medal, and in the 2 games that I've seen, they've just been steamrolling the competition. They play the Czech Republic tonight, are heavily favored again, and they just continue to play at a very, very high level.
Their games, and perhaps the men's games too, particularly yesterday's against Nigeria, Carmelo Anthony scored 37 points, and I think he played about 14 minutes. It was an extraordinary game. And it brings up a question: are some of the fields in the Olympics simply too watered down? Are there teams that are in the Olympics that shouldn't be? Should the qualifying process be more difficult?
Well, I think actually as far as basketball is concerned, and I cover the NBA for the Chicago Tribune, I think that's part of the argument that David Stern is making this back to a 23 and under kind of limit, and it's taking some of these NBA stars out of the equation. The number that jumped out to me from that men's game last night was 29 three-pointers in 40 minutes. You don't see that very often in any kind of game. So regardless of the competition, that's obviously phenomenal shooting by the U.S. men, but it certainly is a fair debate on the sport.
Yeah.
Casey, I have a question for you. Isn't really Stern's under 23 rule a part of his master plan to create another sort of world league, like a World Cup of soccer, to have a World Cup of basketball, so yet he can still market his marquee players? Or is he really concerned about the players?
Well, I think that's obviously been speculated upon, and obviously Stern's going to be phasing out here, so he probably wants to make one more signature move to define his incredibly long and spectacular tenure as NBA commissioner. But that's been one thing that's speculated. I do think in part also, this NBA thing has kind of run its course. I think they've marketed the sport worldwide and probably got as much publicity as they needed to get out of it. And I think the competition level, how far ahead the U.S. men is from the rest of the world, has been, defined at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think also that's lacking? It seems so familiar. I mean, a lot of the same names. I mean, if Blake Griffin had been healthy and played, would that have added anything to it? I mean, I guess they might have scored 170 points last night.
Well, I think that speaks to Colangelo and Krzyzewski's commitment. They've really got a lot of guys to buy in for a long period of time on this in this NBA cycle, and I think that really is a nice testament to those two guys. And they're both rumored to be phased out after these Olympics as well. So I think, regardless of what happens, I think you're going to see some major changes as far as men's basketball concerned once you move to Brazil.
Casey, if Rose and Howard were on the team, they won by 83 last night. How much would they have won by?
There wouldn't have been as many three-pointers for Carmelo. So.
Yeah, Carmelo might not have had 400 three-pointers.
Yeah, there might have been some alley-oops from Derek to Dwight, but there wouldn't have been as many threes, I don't think.
Yeah, that was like an all-star game, even perhaps with less defense. But Casey, you've also been with the men's volleyball team, which also is looking extremely strong. Just beat Brazil. What do you think is going on there?
Well, I hate to use the same storyline as I did for the U.S. women's basketball team, but I think this team's been overlooked as well. They're the defending gold medalists from Beijing. I also covered that in China, and they entered this tournament ranked 5th in the world because they had a very uneven past 4 years. Even the players in the team will admit as much. They did not play well coming off that gold medal high from China. But they knocked off the world number 1 Brazil last night in 4 sets after dropping the first set. And it's a nice mix of veteran players like Clayton Stanley and Reed Fritty from the 2008 team with some newcomers like Matthew Anderson that have really added a lot of firepower to this team. So people probably would not have pegged them for a medalist coming into these games, and now they're positioning themselves to do that very feat.
Mm-hmm. And Lisa, you were out at Wimbledon this morning. Do we have an update on the Roger Federer match?
Yeah,
that was very long.
I apologize. I've been looking away a couple times to try and catch a score on the monitor. Right when we started, it was 13-13 in the third set. At Wimbledon, they don't play a third set tiebreaker.
Del Potro, right?
Federer, yeah. And I'm trying to see. I think it's probably still on serve. But I was out there. It was just one of those beautiful Wimbledon days. I was out there watching tennis with our tennis guru Bill Dwyer, which is always a treat. It was the first time I'd been to Wimbledon in 6 years. So, the last time I covered it, when there was rain, there was no tennis. So it was interesting to see how the facility looked. I didn't think the roof took anything away from it. Actually, they've done a really nice job of putting it all together. And this tournament probably wouldn't be finishing on time if they didn't have that. So it was fun to soak in the atmosphere. I was telling Casey and John when I walked in that the no cheering in the press box rule was being violated in the worst way possible by a Swiss journalist who threw his arms up in the air when Roger came walking out in the court and shouted something, and we all kind of like looked at each other and said, "Wow!" But that's part of it. Actually, covering the Olympics and World Cups, the reporters from other countries often do cheer for their teams quite vociferously.
Well, I suspect there has to be some of that going on with Andy Murray. He hasn't managed to win a major championship, and Britain certainly has been behind him, and supporting him and crying with him when he doesn't win. He's got a chance. He's in the semifinals now. He plays Djokovic, I believe.
Yes, he does. There's a women's match.
So that's got to be that's got to be on a lot of people's minds there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Considering the heartbreak of Wimbledon, and just last month, barely a month ago, he just dissolved in tears. And I would love to know what the television ratings in Scotland will be for today's semifinal, and let alone if he happens to beat Novak and gets into the final. It would be. I would just love to see the papers and the reaction if he were able to somehow come through and win gold, because he's very, very close. And unfortunately, he's playing in the era of Federer, Nadal, Djokovic. It's just a golden era of tennis. Yeah,
he's an extremely popular player in that part of the world for sure. How did tell me this? How there was some discussion about the quality of the courts after Wimbledon, and with a tournament coming so quickly on the heels of that, has the quality of the courts been okay? The courts
today was my first actual close-up look. I mean, the seats at center court are probably the best seats in sports, so we were able to watch pretty closely.
Mm-hmm.
It's dusty, it's getting brown at the end of a lot of play. It does, it really does, but it was incredible. They were having some backcourt rallies. It looked like they were playing points like you'd see in the French Open, the length of them. So, yes, to answer your question, they have done an outstanding job. I think the pressure that's put on the guys that tend the grass there is a lot like the guys that have to contend with the ice for the NHL's Winter Classic. It's a lot of pressure to get it just right.
Mm-hmm.
And
so,
Mike, real quick, Mike and Lisa,
yeah.
I actually snuck out to Wimbledon for my first time ever a couple of days ago. And Lisa, I don't know about you, but I'm always still taken aback by seeing the garish colors instead of the white uniforms of Wimbledon. You had Federer in the bright red shirt, and I saw Leighton Hewitt wearing a bright yellow shirt. It always seems kind of out of place in this cathedral tennis.
Oh, I know. I had to blink a few times and check and you've got Del Potro in the sky blue Argentine colors, and it is. There's a lot of cosmetic differences that sort of, I think, probably take the purists aback. But the other thing, I was looking around the crowd, and I wish I knew how many people were actually there for the first time, because I've talked to a lot of journalists who had never been out there, and they come away just oohing and ahhing about the venue, and I actually got a little misty-eyed when I walked in there today, being back for the first time in 6 years.
Well, it's good to see that you've recovered.
Federer's up 30 love on Del Potro's serve here at 14-14, so don't know if it's about to end.
I have one more update for you. It looks like I'm trying to look at the soccer score here. The U.S. just went up 2-0 on New Zealand. Sorry about that.
Let's talk a little bit about U.S. women's soccer. We don't need to talk about the men, of course, but they're now into the knockout phase, and they're I don't know how far along are they in the New Zealand game.
85 minutes.
And that's just a replay of the goal. They played New Zealand in February and had a real difficult time winning 2-1, and it took a couple quick goals by Alex Morgan to seal it, and they had not played them since. So as I was saying, I think it was yesterday, that we're not exactly talking about a power of women's soccer. It's kind of fun to see new teams emerge. Only a few years ago, actually, women's soccer was not quite like basketball or softball or hockey, where the games were so one-sided and very few nations competed or contended well. There's a lot of new nations, coming up quickly.
Yeah, I think the competition has improved across the board significantly there.
And we're on break point now for Federer.
Okay.
Federer to win.
Oh, to win or go one up?
To win the third set.
Well, actually, if he breaks,
it just goes up 15-14, right?
Yeah, it's actually triple break point or something? Sorry about that.
Okay.
John handled the judo so much better yesterday, but we'll work with him.
Okay. Well, let's bring one more thing up here. An interesting thing that many people don't know, but kind of moved to the forefront when a legislation was introduced in Congress to exempt U.S. athletes from paying taxes on their gold medals and prize money won in the Olympics. And I'm quite sure that most people didn't even have never given any thought to the idea that if you win a gold medal, you're going to have to pay tax on it. John, what do you think about this? It's kind of an interesting issue.
Well, it's not the actual medal. It's the fact that the USOC gives the athletes who do medal $25,000 for a gold, $15,000 for a silver, and $10,000 for a bronze. You know, they do earn the medals, just like everybody else. We have to pay taxes on it. We're not given a big tax exemption, for money that we earn. And I don't know. It sounds like political grandstanding to me at this moment, at this time. And of course, with Congress being like it is, they're not going to get it through because there's too big a log jam of bills. But if they really want to honor the heroes of America, why don't you not tax our military, or not tax our firemen, or our policemen, or our teachers, or actually not tax our journalists? I think that could work. I think I'd favor that.
I think you're going to gain no support on the last one, but
maybe
that one.
Maybe not.
We'll wrap it up. Casey Johnson, Chicago Tribune. John Cherwa and Lisa Dillman from the LA Times. We will see you on Monday. Have a good day and a good weekend.
Thank you.